Good morning. I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche Organization for your daily video update for April 23rd, 2025. I'm going to be talking today about Donald Trump and the quest for peace. No matter what your opinion is of Trump, there are two things for sure. One, he is a disruptor of the status quo. And it's not always clear what he's doing, but it is clear that he takes a certain amount of pleasure in being a disruptor and delight in attacking the establishment. Now that's useful as far as it goes. And secondly, with the exception of his policy towards Palestine, it is clear that he is serious about avoiding war. But it has to go further than that. What's important with Trump is that he does seem to believe in negotiations, whether it's the art of the deal, whether it's getting the best possible alternative. Unlike Biden, Obama, and George W. Bush, Trump has proven to be willing to engage in open negotiations, including with Kim Jong-un of North Korea in his first term, and today with Putin and also with Iran. The normalization of relations with Russia is absolutely critical for world peace. And the idea is not just ending the war in Ukraine, but establishing an ongoing relationship, business, economic relationship with Russia. The big problem there is Europe, as it's clear that the Europeans are moving toward a war with Russia, and in doing so are turning against the interests of their own populations. The Europeans seem to still be fighting the war of Biden on behalf of Biden and the corporate cartels that run the European Union, instead of acting for the interests of their people. So ending the war in Ukraine is going to require getting tough with Europe. We'll see what happens there, but the ongoing negotiation process looks quite promising. Now, secondly, somewhat stunning turn of events with Iran. Remember, Trump was the one who broke the Joint Comprehensive Peace Agreement with Iran in his first term, and until recently was talking very tough about taking on Iran for its nuclear program. But now there are negotiations underway with Oman as an intermediary, and there's progress in this. In fact, there is a very strong statement issued by Iranian Foreign Minister Araghchi just yesterday, in which he reaffirmed Iran's commitment to not build nuclear weapons, but he went further. He invited the United States to participate with Iran in the construction of civilian nuclear plants in the country. He said the Iranian civilian nuclear power program goes back to Eisenhower's Atoms for Peace project in the 50s, and that they do have an intent to construct 19 civilian nuclear plants. And of course, if U.S. firms are involved in this, it makes it much more easy to confirm that there's no military application to the work that's being done in developing nuclear power. Remember, there's an edict from the supreme religious leader of Iran that Iran should not develop nuclear weapons because, according to Ayatollah Khamenei, it's immoral and against the religion to have nuclear weapons. So cooperation with U.S. firms, that would be win-win. That would be ideal. And we'll see what response there is from the Trump administration to that. Again, I point to the negotiations with Kim Jong-un, which showed that Trump is not afraid to talk to people who are considered enemies. Now, there are two problems in this overall picture. The first one is the support for Israel and Netanyahu. Now, I think Trump has demonstrated not a total blanket support. He did use Witkoff to get Netanyahu to accept the initial ceasefire in Gaza. And he made it clear that he would not support Israel attacking Iran. However, he has not come out against the ethnic cleansing of Gaza. And the way to do that would be to cut off military aid from Israel if it's going to continue to kill Palestinians and deny the justice of a Palestinian state. Now, this would be a giant step forward for President Trump, but it's essential that this step be taken. And it would mean he'd come into opposition of some of the neocons and Israel First people in his own administration, in particular people like Rubio, Waltz, and others who seem intent on striking Iran. So the question of the follow-through on negotiations with Iran requires resolving the Palestinian problem. And the Palestinian problem is not a problem caused by the Palestinians, but by the Zionist extremists in Israel. Now, imagine what it would mean for the world to have an end to the war in Ukraine and an end to Bibi Netanyahu's ethnic cleansing in Gaza. This is what the win-win is all about. Then you could see that Trump could work together with Vladimir Putin, with Xi Jinping. Instead of making threats, there could be joint work on great projects for infrastructure development. Xi, in Trump's first term, invited Trump to have American firms participate in the Belt and Road Initiative. There's talk about joint efforts in space exploration. And finally, a total end to colonial looting, an end to neo-imperial policy. This would be ideal for the global South, but also for the United States and Russia and China. And it would be a way in which the Europeans could have an opportunity to redeem themselves. Now, the other fight going on is Trump versus Jerome Powell. It's not really a fight because it's not Jerome Powell per se, the chairman of the Federal Reserve. The issue is over the power to create money and credit. Unfortunately, since the Federal Reserve Act of 1913, that's been left to the hands of the Federal Reserve, which is not a U.S. government agency. It's a functioning arm of the private banks, just as all the central banks are, the ones behind the idea of a great reset, of technocracy, and so on. Now, these private banks and financial institutions have run up an incredible debt and have pumped huge volumes of money into the financial system, which are threatening to collapse the financial system. Are they doing this on behalf of nations? No, they're doing it on behalf of the private banks that make the policy decisions. So this is something that Trump must make clear. His fight is against the private Federal Reserve System and the central banks that work with corporate cartels to usurp the legitimate power over money creation and credit that in the U.S. Constitution is vested in the hands of the Congress, not the private banks. That's the LaRouche solution. Go for bankruptcy reorganization, reorganize the debt, and generate a new credit institution which will make credit available for entrepreneurs and developers, industrialists, not for speculators. Now, to come back to the question of peace, there's an additional note. There are reasons why many people were upset with the papacy of Pope Francis, especially in areas where he seemed to be going against the traditional teachings of the Church, especially related to green policy. But he did demonstrate in his papacy, and especially in the last days of his life, his profound and passionate commitment to peace and justice, including his final prayer for the Palestinian people just before he died. Peace requires a commitment for mutual benefit. This is part of the teachings of Jesus Christ as mediated through Pope Francis. And the idea that the concern for the common good is something that all leaders should have as a primary driving force. a commitment to the well-being of all. That's what the concept of the general welfare in the U.S. Constitution is all about. So the fight is not against nations. It's against the aristocracy, which is operating over and above national governments. That's what the Great Reset is all about. That's what the Federal Reserve and the Bank for International Settlements, Davos, the World Trade Organization, they operate for private special interests as opposed to the idea of a general welfare. So for Trump to achieve the peace that he says he's for, and to achieve the revitalization of American industry and ingenuity, he should be collaborating with Putin, with Xi Jinping, with Modi, with the BRICS countries, with the Global South, in the fight against the imperial greed of the oligarchy. And to the extent he does that, it will make it much more clear that this is a fight for a true peace, a peace that we all hope and pray for.